not Mr. Reichenwald believed that it was.
I'll object if you're arguing evidence which was not presented in front of this board. You can argue the merits of the evidence, but this board heard no evidence whatsoever that Captain Gardner was in a relationship at the time that question was asked. You can argue the merits of evidence, but you can't argue or pretend or manufacture or suggest evidence that was not presented in front of this board.
I don't know I don't understand what he's saying. I'm not saying there was evidence other than his own testimony when asked about whether he was in an inappropriate relationship. He said he was. Now, whether it's morally inappropriate or inappropriate because he's her supervisor or any other reason, he himself said it was an inappropriate relationship. So when he told Kevin Sweat no to that question, he lied. He lied. He didn't tell him about, are you going to move on? No. Okay. He didn't tell him then that he'd been in a sexual relationship with her, an affair. He didn't tell him that he was said they were friends. That was misleading. That was not being forthright and a lie in any other sense of the word. The other charges dealing with conduct which interferes with job performance, efficiency of county service, conduct on or off duty that reflects unfavorably, or any other conduct. We kind of call those a little bit catch-alls because the judgment issues that he showed in dealing with his relationships with these women, whether or not he showed favoritism in reality or whether it was just perceived, and I think you had sufficient testimony to tell you that people knew they were having an affair, and people like Andy Etheridge, who wanted that job, was concerned that because of the closeness of their relationship, that he would not be given the same consideration. And I think he even testified that he didn't get the same chances to work in investigations until he said something to Mr. Gardner, which Mr. Gardner admitted that he asked him, I want to do that, I want to do as much as she's doing. So that, whether there was actual favoritism or perceived favoritism, it doesn't matter, because perception is reality. And it's those things, as Mr. Reichenwald said, that hurt the organization from a management perspective. I think it's key to recall that he was not a line level person. He was a person with high authority, high responsibility. No matter how he wants to paint it, he was the acting deputy chief at times. When he was doing that job, he supervised those women in one form or another. When Officer Gittner, he even admitted when she worked on investigations, she was working for him. I asked him about authorizing her payroll time for investigations, and he admitted that he probably had done that. So what I'd like you to do is to, let me finish the violations. The code of conduct violation that was sustained not only by Nikki Dolphenmeyer, but by Mr. Reichenwald, and I think he explained that. The last part of that, where it says someone losing their impartiality in conducting public business, that's how he felt Mr. Gardner's actions with Ms. Gittner influenced him and were a violation of that. The neglect of duty is additionally, that also falls under that's the beach patrol or beach safety procedure regarding the gun incident. The earlier one, number 10, is the merit rule. So we had two different rules that are addressing the gun incident, one being the beach patrol rule and the other being the merit rule. So at the end of the day, which I'm going to ask you to do is consider the testimony of the witnesses here yesterday and today. You heard from Kara Gittner and Paige Winters. It's very difficult for both of those women to come here and testify. They testified truthfully about the things that had occurred between them. Ms. Winters told you that she was under the impression from some, I don't think she said specifically, but when she started her affair with him, she thought that he and his wife were not together or whatever, and when she found out that that wasn't the case, she cut off the affair. She was a trainee, she was a probationary officer, as was Officer Gittner at the time he started the affair with her. That is just unacceptable. Mr. Gardner had the ability, whether he wanted to admit it or not, and I think he did finally admit it, to have an impact on their jobs, whether he thought they really did something wrong or not. If those affairs went bad and he wanted to get them fired, as y'all probably know, probationary employees can be let go without reason, and he held a position in the organization that allowed him to do that had he wanted to. You heard Mr. Rechtenwald talked about the sexual harassment issues, and there was a lot of back and forth about that training that was because of the scrutiny of the department, which I'm not going to beat that dead horse. I think it's clear. Everybody knows they were under a lot of scrutiny, and it was admitted by Mr. Gardner. But he finally admitted that he knew as a manager that it wasn't, there was potential there for a supervisor to have an affair with a subordinate. And I submit to you it's the same if they're in the same level, but if it's a supervisor that can have an effect on someone's job, if the relationship goes bad, that's why management doesn't allow it. Or they separate the people when they find out they don't let one work for the other. That's all you heard Director Sweat say he would have done had he been told about this relationship. He wasn't going to pass judgment on the fact, although he clearly did not agree with him with Gardner as a married man having an affair, but he wasn't going to pass judgment on that. He just said, I would have separated them. I want you to consider the testimony of Tammy Maris. Now, Mr. Gardner wanted to tell you today that she lied to you about the facts, and keep in mind what a witness's motivation is to come in here and tell the truth. She has nothing to gain by lying about this. Captain Maris has nothing to gain by lying about receiving phone calls from him asking for Officer Gittner to come and work for him and do investigations. She was clear on that. So you're allowed to use that when you're judging the credibility of witnesses, who has the most to gain by lying. And I submit to you that Mr. Gardner would, and that Tammy Maris told you the truth when she told you that he routinely asked for Officer Gittner to work investigations with him. Of course, that puts her in direct supervision of him, and that's why he doesn't want you to think that ever happened. There's been a lot of testimony over the last 2 days, and what I'd ask you to do is to follow the policies and rules for your deliberations, to consider the final letter of termination, the evidence that was presented to you here today, and to sustain the findings that Mr. Gardner violated these directives, and that based on all of the testimony and including the appointing authority who took the actions, description of you of why he felt that judgment, that poor judgment in the lying about the affair or the relationship, in the phone records, in maintaining this intimate secret affair and allowing himself to supervise these Ms. Gittner, that in totality, because of the level of he was in the organization, that despite his good record, he could not be allowed to continue employment. We'd ask you to uphold the termination at the end of the day. Thank you.